This one's about forward and reverse, not just a video. There's a lot of things it pertains to. I'm not going to profess to understand the functions and underpinnings of the cosmos, simply that I am able to some extent to observe. In trying to follow I don't know if it's curiosity or what it is, whatever it is that makes us question things. In trying to question and understand the nature of the universe and trying to reconcile things like spirituality and history and religion and physics, proposition versus results, all kinds of things, right? It's the compare and contrast. And in all of this, if you get into things that are existential or cosmological, you're finding out, like, it was mind-blowing to me because it had never been explained to me. I'm always had an issue with math in school. I've had to use some hacks and tricks to be able to do any kind of math on my own that isn't involving a calculator or a pencil and paper to do it. To be able to do it in my head required some trickery, which is goofy because in so many respects, I'm just a genius and I'm not tooting my horn. That's what it is. And in other places, I read these blocks. So that was one of them. In school, I had a hell of a time failing math, acing literally everything else. It blew my mind because I wasn't able to just look at Einstein's relativity equations and understand them. It blew my mind to find out the reason why the speed of light is abbreviated with the variable lowercase c. And the thing with that is, the C stands for causality. And once you dig into the implications of that, what that really means, the speed of light in a vacuum is equal to the speed of causality, the speed of cause and effect, the speed of is it possible to have an effect before the cause kind of thing, right? That's when people in the thought experiments and rock star explanations and Astrum and all of that, right? Like all these different videos and everything you can find where they're explaining the universe or whatever. If you get into things like time travel, they talk about violating causality. You get into things like faster than light speed travel. You start talking about violating causality because it would be a thing where you could travel while sending signals back toward home. And you could arrive at your destination and then return home before your signals make it. Or in some cases, there's places where your because of the nature of relativity, at least as far as what the Penrose diagram makes seem to be the case, and it seems to have been pretty accurate so far, is that your timeline while moving at relativistic speeds is completely different from the back home timeline. And so you have some really weird time dilation effects. But it's not that time actually speeds up or slows down and all this other. It's very complicated. It's a really weird system. And either we totally don't understand it and we overcomplicate it, or it is simply something that works in a way that is really hard for us to just look at and say, oh, yeah, it's A plus B equals C. Blew my mind. Speed of causality. Wait, what does that even mean? Well, okay, so if you think of events happening, we're not talking about physics. We're not talking about laws of motion. We're talking about events happening. That there is a speed at which the results move. Whoa! But even more so that they start looking at, all these different ways that we extrapolate stuff, and it's like, in the same way that they found, first off, they found in Einstein's equations that it seems like there should be the allowance for, if the circumstances were right, repulsive anti-gravity. We've never really found examples of it, but it's in there. It looks like it could be a thing. Likewise, quantized gravity. Once quantum theory became kind of, the Feynman diagrams and everything else, and they're like, okay, so we've been able to work out that there are quantum mechanical descriptions that work for all of the subatomic forces. What about gravity? And then they extrapolate to gravity, and they're like, well, that would require this type of particle called a graviton, which would be a gravitational mediating particle, and that it would be like space-time is made out of gravitons. Gravitons are space-time. But space-time is not a thing. It's an environment. It's multiple dimensions, or at least a dimension of space, but multiple dimensions of space, allowing movement, and time, because without time, movement doesn't really exist. Is that causal? I don't know. We're getting into the weeds. So the thing is that eventually, when they start figuring out things like antimatter, and they're like, okay, we've discovered these particles with our accelerators, the descriptions are there, we're figuring out what it does and whatever. But according to these diagrams, the antiparticle is moving forward in space and backwards in time. Weird, right? But that seems to actually be what it is. But what that means is there are causal implications to things like antimatter. It also implies that we perceive time moving in one direction. This does not necessarily mean that whatever time is or is not, or however things actually work, we may simply only experience it in one way because that's how we are, and not because that's just the way it is universally. That there may be beings that perceive time in reverse. Or what if there was one theory I read years and years and years ago that's probably some bullshit, but here's the idea. What if at the moment the Big Bang occurs and the universe expands out, and eventually it reaches a point where it kind of stops and then it pulls back in on itself. And once it collapses down, either at that point time moves in reverse, or once it crunches and begins the second universe, that is just the first universe's time in reverse. Weird concept, right? So I've been thinking about starting a dream journal. I haven't kept track of my dreams. I don't like to lucid dream. I like my dreams to be the quiet retreat from the waking life. Although at this point, my waking life is not exactly so stressful that I need that escape. So I'm going to be seeing figuring out what's going on internally in ways that I haven't really looked at for a while. Something I'm already aware of that people have discovered on their own by keeping journals and paying attention to what it is that once you learn how to interpret the dreams, you get to see what the messages are. And it's not exactly a foretelling of the future, but it is kind of tomorrow in reverse kind of thing. The near future in reverse is oftentimes what these end up being. And it's very interesting because reverse speech analysis is kind of a thing. It's not an exact science. I've done some fiddling with a couple of videos that I've recorded, one of which I uploaded the original, then I uploaded the backwards, then I uploaded the backwards of the backwards, because the way I had to process the backwards to get any kind of machine-generated auto caption, because to me, they weren't sounding like any words. And I wasn't willing to use my own pareidolia to figure out what they mean. Then I'm not being objective. So I let AI basically do it. And for the way that it worked, at least somewhat. There's something there. Some very interesting coincidences, but also a lot of stuff that I see in the text of it probably doesn't have anything to do with me. I think it's just, it's not my neighbors. None of these names that it shows are familiar, but maybe there may be something to that. There could be somewhere in the world a person whose life events are actually coincidentally having something to do with what the reverse speech analysis is talking about. And for all I know, that's somebody that I've randomly bumped into in a dream while completely unaware, because I don't keep track of my dreams. so that I don't remember anything that happens in my dreams. And, I don't know. I know that convergent dreaming is real. I know that there seems to be somewhat, in some cases, though not always, of kind of a group environment that some people dream into. So, but the thing is, like I said, a lot of dreams tend to be like your subconscious is showing you the future in reverse. But then also this concept of possible big crunch idea being that at some point or another, time as we would think of it would begin to move backwards, although I don't think anyone would notice. But then it's like, so you've got beings that are going from maturity to youth or whatever, or the universe, like I don't know. It would be a reversal of entropy. It would be really weird. But maybe entropy has something to do with the passage of time. That's the indication of the passage of time, cosmically speaking. Who knows? We don't understand it. Maybe it doesn't have that. Maybe it doesn't need that. In the reverse speech analyses that I've done, I've definitely noticed seems to be a conversation happening between more than one individual. It does not sound like little words following the things that I say. I can account for that personally on some level, assuming that it's just alter egos. But if it's not just alter egos having this conversation in reverse in my subconscious while I'm speaking, then it may be connected to something external via something like the collective unconscious and also like convergent dreaming. And I've kind of also had a suspicion over the years that a lot of the dream world that your subconscious interacts with is pervasive in your daily waking life all around you, though you don't realize it. And then on top of that, of course, then there's also theories and propositions and belief systems revolving around unseen higher dimensional beings that govern or interact with our lives as well. And it may or may not even be that. Who knows? There could be multiple things going on all at the same time. I know in the second RSA that I have kept private, because there's a bunch of stuff in there that I have not unraveled. I'm still waiting on it to have maybe a more cohesive caption, because on the weirdest podcast you've ever heard, which is a reverse speech analysis of applying the Gnostic Eye, it initially had some words in the captions that auto-generated that is not the text on the screen. But when you hit the caption button, it's a different set. I did the second video differently so that the captioning is completely and obviously different. But I'm still waiting, because it took a week or two for the one with the fake podcast, for that to have a more comprehensive caption. I don't know why or how it did that. I just know that it, after about 2 weeks, had a way more comprehensive set of captions that were very distinctly different from what was on the screen, from what CapCut thought it had read or heard and put into speech. As well as, it turns out I think a lot of the GPT translated stuff I actually did not put up. I had thought that I was doing that, and I seem to recall that it became such a laborious process because it's all free version, screw stuff up on purpose. And I'm sorry, I can't do that. Would you like to make another request? Until, oh, I'm sorry, you've run out of free requests for the day. Would you like to pay to keep going? And I'd be like, yeah, no. I decided not to make it a week to get this one video that wasn't that important. What it was saying was not that vital. I was like, I'd like to know what all this other stuff is, but so far what I've seen of it, it's not as enlightening or elucidating as you would think. There's a lot of conversations about snow. There's a lot of conversations about weather. There's a lot of conversations about some kind of metaphysical or transcendental abstracts of reality, but more to the effect of not knowing. On the new one, I still haven't got that yet. I'm still waiting. It's only been a few days since I put it up. It's unlisted. But that one, there were different languages in it than the other one. There's a more coherent narrative and conversation, even though it's one voice. And there's even one that at one point, the audio and everything else is very clear. You can hear it, and it's like, yeah, that sounds like what it's saying. Something to the effect of being a female wearing a bra, and then something about just showing the mask. And I'm not a female. I don't own a bra. My ex didn't leave any here when she left. There are none here. Now, I have what you might call man boobs. My mom smoked a lot of weed while she was pregnant with me. Explains a lot. But whatever this was talking about had nothing to do with me. Had nothing to do with anything else that I was, content that I view or anything. It was just seemingly unrelated. So, but it was coherent. That's the weird part. So I don't know if this is a person who is known to me that refers to, if it's just somebody who is aware of me that I'm not aware of. I don't know. I have no freaking clue. That's kind of the weird thing with that stuff. What I do know is that the original source, which I also did not upload at all from the second reverse speech analysis, was simply observations that I had made about some things that I was noticing. I kind of had at that moment had kind of an epiphany of everything being done to everyone, manipulative wise, control wise. It was like I could see the whole thing 40,000 feet for a moment. Gestalten, completely full view without a direct focus on anything. And I could see everything about it, and I was trying to articulate that, and I did not do so well. But then when I reversed it, there's a lot of wild ass conversation. So I don't know if it pertains to me or if it pertains to someone else. I have no clue. But it's interesting that we can find these kind of things that seem to work in reverse that you wouldn't expect. Subconsciously, they're all, both ways. I believe your subconscious mind can probably see both ways. That it's just our mental inward, like what you would call the literal ego, the sense of self, allows navigation by considering a one-way trip through time. Because otherwise, what is navigation? How do you decide on what you just did and then undo it? That would be seeing both ways. So anyways, I'm sorry this didn't have a more definite point, was not more coherent. Feel free to screen grab this and play it in reverse and see what you get, because I'm not going to bother with it at this point. That's what I got. Just consider the distinct possibility that what you thought reality was is not what you thought it was.